Whatever that is, yeah, yeah.
Actually, such tools are existing in Bangalore ecosystem context. These are termed and new term called finishing schools. So they do teach you all the social skills as well as the skills that are required.
Sure.
But it's so very surprising, as much as we think that this might be a model, still as an industry employer, we don't try to.
Ma'am, actually those are not industry.
They are only for pharma industry, run by only pharmaceutical industry themselves.
But then there is somewhere the capacity of connecting is not that highly.
No, I mean, like, people who are running pharmaceutical industry are creating these schools so that they can create skilled labor from the other.
Sure, we'll take that offline, you know. Yeah. I think he's got enough confidence to put money into that business, so you can take it offline. Yeah, okay. Very good, good for you. Yeah. Okay, so there are three things that are important for a startup to get started with, right? When it comes to building this proof, right? First is the minimum critical problem, right? And in this case, is the problem of skilling minimum, or is the problem of lack of awareness minimum? But is it critical enough? Right? That's the question.
It can be triggered for this.
Exactly. So that's the question, right? Is it minimum enough and is it critical enough? Right? Which means there is some really significant outcome if you build proof with that problem being solved. And naturally, something which is smaller in size and scope takes much less cash, much less time. And when you're building proof, those are the single most important variables that you have to keep in mind. Am I building proof in the shortest time? Am I building proof with the lowest cash? I'm using the word cash because that's what it is. It's not capital. It's cash. Either yours or your father-in-law's, right? It's cash, right? Second, the first target customer, right? In this case, on the employer side, as well as on the candidate side, will you go after somebody who is blissfully unaware? On the candidate side, will you go after somebody who is blissfully unaware of the fact that he has a shot at getting a better job, but has taken no effort in doing that? Or will you go after somebody who has tried to repeatedly go attend interviews, and he knows that he is underemployed, he knows that he can get a better job, he takes his effort to go attend interviews, but he's not able to get connected? Which one will you target? Second one. How big is that in terms of the percentage of the total market? Very small, but good enough for your proof? The guy is already waiting, man. He can't wait to have a solution to his problem. And in fact, he's trying to solve it, but he's not able to solve it completely, effectively. Do you need marketing for that? Do you need advertisements? Do you need sales? Nothing. So pick your first target customer. Similarly, on the employer side, right, who will be your first target customer? Somebody who is repeatedly putting ads, right, for the same posting again and again. What does it indicate to you? Right? So as a startup, if you're building proof, try to go very direct and very targeted at those customers that you know have this problem, face this problem, or trying to solve this problem, right? And lastly, the MVP. In this case, what was it? Digitize the job postings, put it on SMS, text, WhatsApp, and connect it to an IVR, build a profile, send these profiles over to the employers, and make interviews happen. That's the MVP, right? Okay. So I'm just going to skip this, move straight into target market planning, right? So I'm going to walk you through a little model, a little framework, a little method, right? And we'll try to use this example, yeah? And we'll try to use this example and see if we can learn the process, right? And then you can apply it in your context, okay? So the question to ask while you're building this proof for this business is your target market disproportionately bigger than the market currently served by the existing players? right? So in this particular case, I'll just take the example forward. I'll give you some more data points, right? So we said, okay, let's go build proof, right? And let's go look after these undergraduate, underemployed graduates who are trying to get employed but are failing. And then let's also look at those employers who are repeatedly putting job postings. And we found something very interesting. Our first target customer in this example was government jobs. Government jobs, right? This is, corporation, municipality, panchayat, and those kinds of people, PWD, highways department, they want technicians, right? These jobs were the highest number. And there were repeated postings that were happening in vernacular media, right? So we took that. Now, if I sit down and say, okay, now I built this proof, and in 3 months we've shown a percentage of underemployed graduates getting connected with interviews, and then some of them are also now taking up skilling, and I'm showing some business metrics on that front. And on the employer's front, I'm saying I've gotten so many postings on my database. I have so many interviews on an average set up for each of these postings. I have those metrics to measure, right? If I just focused on employer and graduates in 6 months, what's the traction I have? I have traction on this, I have traction on that, right? But instead, while I start, I say, can I build a business ecosystem while I'm building this proof? How will I go about it, right? So I asked them the question, who are all the people who benefit by solving this underemployment problem? Who do you think? Which is the employer? There is the candidate. Who else?
The government, the local
government, society.
the local
Society, at least the household will benefit, right? The average monthly income of the household just goes up, right? So that's got derivative benefits, which anyway, but at least the household will benefit. Who else? Sorry? Institutes and ITIs. How will they benefit? What is their problem? Placements. Right? Now let's say I have proof for 10 candidates who got placed, right? And they come from 3 institutes, polytechnics or ITI institutes. I would go to them and say, hey, by the way, we've done this, FYI, and that's it, right? And then every time I keep making placements, I will just send them an FYI, FYI, FYI. In about 3 months, what will happen? The principal will give you an appointment, right? And then say, but why don't you come and do it? Exactly, right? And why 1 or 2? Why don't you do 30, 40, right? Okay. Who others will benefit?
So the same vertical applied with the ITA.
Trainers, brilliant, right? What has Google taught us? Don't do it yourself. Get somebody else to do it, but get money in the process. Yeah? So trainers, why? Is there training centers full of people, overflowing, people standing on top of their heads and shoulders?
They also get employment.
They're going empty, right? So you're saying, I send these guys for interviews, these many guys failed, they need training. Do I sit and build training on my own? No, I'll say, here's a number, call them, and I'll call them and say, boss, 10%. Right? Who else will benefit? Which is, in this case, the employer. But beyond that, you're saying government?
Yeah, it is because in the data of the government data, you will get the lesser unemployment rate being registered and more economic development being registered.
True. Very good. Very good. I would just want to call that the department, right? Some department out there, agency department out there, which is, we've done that. There's certainly, the employers are, you mean recruiters as in HR agencies? Okay, very good. I was going to come to that. Good one.
Assessment agencies which are going to validate those.
True, true. So now the way it works for the department is that these guys have an employment target to achieve, right? And they have funds for that. They have funds for that. They have skill sort of dole-ups, right? They give money out and say, go get them skilled, which is a very smaller size of what NSDC is doing, right? But there are and these are typically budgets carved out at a panchayat level, at a block level, and so on and so forth, right? Now, if I think of that also as a beneficiary, then I would say, here is data, and we've been credibly doing this. Can you subsidize our operations? Key partners, right? So what does that do to your business plan? Makes this model lower cost,
Lower cost and scalable.
and hence scalable, right? So now, the thinking from the very beginning, if it was to build this business ecosystem, right, in 6 months, look at the data you will have. Will you just have candidate data, employee data as traction, or will you also have traction in terms of institutes which are training these departments, right? The institutes themselves, the polytechnics and the ITIs. And in 6 months, if you've built this business ecosystem, and if somebody is watching you and saying, hey, that's an interesting business that's coming up, will it be easier for him to get in and compete with you, or will you have made it more challenging? Because you've built a business ecosystem and he's got to now redo the entire thing. And a business ecosystem has a multiplier advantage, right? So you do one thing here, it gets multiplied in each of those other points, and then the size of the ecosystem just grows to a much bigger level. It's got exponential growth from that point onwards. So when you're trying to look at target market, your choice is to just look at producer, consumer, or your choice is to look at a business ecosystem. Is that making sense? Okay. So this we looked at yesterday, right? I'm not going to go into it. She almost fell on the ground. My God, don't give me another iceberg. Yeah? No, madam, you're not doing that. Yeah, this is, I'm learning from VC Karthik, right? This is the unexpected, right? I want to talk about the bowling alley model of markets. Okay, what's the two important rules in the bowling alley? Number one.
Don't break the rules.
Sorry? Don't break the rules.
Hit the bottle.
So what are you trying to do? You're trying to score a perfect strike, which is all 10 pins fallen, right? Now when you score a perfect strike, all 10 pins down, does your ball hit all of those 10 pins, each of those 10 pins? How many pins?
1 or 2?
He almost has a mathematical model for it. Do you have quadratic equations which solve it?
Actually, he did to scale it up.
Really? We've got the Sachin Tendulkar in room, man. And you guys have to please tell me a little bit more about the audience so that I don't sound like a fool. I'm just going to, can you please come down and help me explain this? So we're going to have a special bowling night sometime in the next 10 days. And we're going to get coached on bowling, right? I know how to bowl girls over, but not this. Don't say that, yeah. Okay. All right. So the number of balls that, the number of pins that the ball actually hits is not more than 4 or 5, right? And it's apparently scientifically proven. I checked it up. Usually it's 3 or 4, and the rarest case it's 5. Right? Now what brings down the other pins?
Impact from each other.
Domino effect. Can I use that word? Or is there a scientific word for it? Is there a technical term for that? Yeah? I mean, come on, man. How do you expect these things to happen, right? You're talking about a bowling alley and you have an expert in the room. My goodness. Jesus Christ. Yeah, okay. What's the second rule? Can you bring the 10 pins down? Can you do a perfect strike by not hitting the first pin? Is that possible, sir? No. Right? So the two rules of the bowling alley. One, you don't need to hit each and every pin. Second, if you don't hit the first pin, you will never have a perfect strike. Am I correct? Am I a pass? Thank you. Right? Okay, now how does that apply to markets? Okay.
What is the most critical problem?
So what are pins in markets?
Segments.
Right?
Yesterday we went through.
Yeah, as it is lots of jargons here. I mean, just keep the jargons down for now.
Just no, but I was talking about the first pin would be the innovators who actually want to try.
Yeah, I didn't want to use the word, which is why we'll come to that. Yeah, okay.
Besides these two routes that you have talked about, I was just wondering whether the speed at which the ball is lost, does that actually,
Yeah, I'm lost.
even if you bowl, you just stop the ball.
Can you please get those two gentlemen 2 passes the nearest bowling alley and they can settle there. And please come back with your quadratic equations on the optimal speed of the ball, right? I mean, that's when it does it. Speed doesn't matter. He's saying it. I'm only saying it back, right? Okay, so the thing is, segments are pins in a market, right? And why have I shown different color pins? Why not 10 white color pins or 10 black color pins?
Their needs are different.
So the different colors of the pins signify what? Different?
Segments with different needs.
Is it different segments or is it different?
Need types.
What are we trying to build when we're trying to build proof? A target market or a business ecosystem? Right? And in a business ecosystem, you have different entities. Right? Which means I will have 3 pins from the employer's type. I'll have 2 different pins from the candidate's type. I'll have 2 different pins from the the trainers or the institutes, that market, right? If I'm thinking ecosystem, then my target market that I'm trying to build out in the next, let's say 6 months or 1 year for this proof has to look like this and not 10 pins of the same color and size. In fact, I did this sometime back in Bangalore and some of them said, why don't you even change the size and shape of these pins?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, yeah, somebody can you please do the creative and give it to me? I'm just stealing pictures from Google, right? So how do we go about using this model in our pursuit of target market planning, right? There are 4 steps. Segmentation. Yeah? So segmentation, not to build a homogeneous market, but to build a heterogeneous business ecosystem, right? And you basically look at each of these markets as iceberg themselves, right? So there is an iceberg in the employer market. There is an iceberg in the candidates market. There's an iceberg in the institutes market. Correct. And then the first 10 pins should be across these key ecosystem players. You should have a good mix. That's the idea. Yeah? Then you select from these segments based on the segment with the most need. Which is it? The segment where customers are not just aware of the problem, but are aware of the problem, they're trying to solve the problem, but they're not happy in the way it is being solved. It's a pain and they're trying to do all kinds of things to alleviate the pain, but they're not able to get it over. That behavior of problem solving is what makes it, not just the understanding or the awareness of, yeah, I have this problem. Who's your better first pin? Somebody who's doing it already but is not able to do it effectively, right? And usually that segment is the most ignored or the most overserved or the untapped segment which is under the water in your iceberg model, right? Go after them. Because you don't have to fight the whales. You don't have to fight the giants. You don't have to fight their huge marketing budgets and advertising budgets. You can go direct to these customers. And going direct is very, very important. So what I would actually recommend is to only look at those segments that you can go direct. Because you're building proof. You need to have full control of this process. If I have to depend on him to go to him, and he is some other guy who's not looking at this as a strategic business, what kind of a mind share will he have in this? So then my entire future is at the mercy of his attention. And if I am 2% of his revenues, well, right? Yeah. I'll come to that. I feel very happy when I do this, right? I mean, someone asks me a question and say, next bullet.
Yeah. About the earlier, so the overserved segment, right? What is that? A new, so there's the challenge between new and old, so shifting between the new way of doing things versus how do you address that if you're going to be the target segment?
So you're saying customers are going to find it difficult to adopt? Yeah, but my point is, if it's ignored, what does it mean? What is overserved? Overserved is I'm making structured, I'm making sheet steel. I'm making I'm making engines which can do the 10-second barrier, right? And I come to you and say, okay, can you make cars for 3,000 euros? You're saying, well, I can make these engines. If you can use them, right? Which is why they're overserved. Value. My expectation is this in terms of quality. Your standard de facto product spec is here, overserved. Right? Who's more willing to pay?
I mean,
the person who's more willing to solve the problem, naturally. Right? So it's a function. So somebody who's not even aware of the problem, right, or is not doing anything about it, will he be more willing to pay, or the guy who's actually trying to do it, but hey, you know what, I'm able to do this 60%, 70%, but it's not getting done. Sorry? And he's already spending, exactly. And in many cases, time is the biggest expense, right? More than, because we tend to notionalize money in that sense, right? We just make it part of our everyday. Yeah, sorry, did I miss a question? Yeah.
Yeah, in our case, we actually had a solution, and then we went ahead searching for the problem. Okay. So in that case,
they had a hammer and they're looking for the nail.
Yeah. So in that case, we again had a segmentation, selection, and pricing. Is it a right option? So we have a hammer and we went to for a nail.
Well, I think you said it yourself. You want me to rub it in?
We already did segmentation.
He's my junior, by the way. He's 10 years junior, so I'm doing a deferred 10-year ragging here. Yeah. So.
No, so
I have special affection for him.
Okay. So we already had done segmentation, selection, and pricing. So is there a right approach, like before you start up the part of this?
Ideally not.
You are like 3 steps ahead and
Yeah, exactly. So ideally, you can sit down, Raghu. Ideally, they say this in Silicon Valley. They say, you don't build a product because you can. You build a product because you should. Right? You can is an indication of.
Say that again, I didn't catch.
Okay, you should not build a product because you can. You should build a product because you should.
Okay.
Right? So can is, I have the technology. Your brother's got triple PhDs or something. Right? You can build it, but do you should? Should is an indication of need
and
all of that. Making sense? So then naturally you're looking at segmentation first. So don't put the cart before the horse. Yeah. Question? How are you guys doing? By the way, that startup has my name on it. Should I get some equity? Come on, man, you already used my name though. Fish. I'm not fishy, by the way. I'm fairly genuine. All right. So last one, sequencing. Right? So you've looked at a few segments from these different ecosystem players, and you've selected them, you've sized them up, and then you're now trying to sequence, which is you're actually trying to set up your bowling alley. Right? What's my first pin? What's the next pin? Right? So in this case of this startup that we just talked about, what's the first pin? The employers, the government jobs, right? That's the first pin. Why? Not only does it help me build proof, it gives me revenues, right? And it has a wonderful domino effect.
No, but it gives the guy a government job, so that has a different significance in T1, T2, T3.
Absolutely. The matrimonial prospects go up, if that's what you meant. Sorry? Yeah, all of that. Yeah, all of that. Stability and all of those things, right? Okay. So the other interesting thing I sort of skipped when I did this bowling alley is to think in terms of, for a startup, building proof is all about becoming a segment leader. So before you become a market leader, you got to become a segment leader, right? Right? Let's try this example. So 1996, 97, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, goes to this tech conference in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and he's called in as one of the emerging entrepreneurs, and he's invited on stage to give a quick talk, right? And the person is introducing him this way: Jeff Bezos, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon, the global leader in online retailing. 96, 97. Is that statement fact or fiction? In fact, people even understand global leader in online internet retailing? Will they even understand those words? Because it didn't exist, right? It didn't exist. Did that market exist? Then how can you have a market leader in a market that does not exist? These are like heights of it, right? Yeah? Whereas if he was introduced as Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon.com, the leader in online books. Fact, fiction? Can you understand it? In fact, you might have even purchased it. You may even be a customer to Amazon, right? So the point is, for a startup, you are by the virtue of the segment that you target first and nothing else. You can have the arrogance and the ego to think of yourself as the next big thing, but to start with, your only reason for existence, your raison d'etre, is the segment that you target first, right? So you got to pick up a segment leader before you become a market leader, right? And in this case of creating markets, you take up segments, you stack them up, right? You become segment leader, and then this domino effect sets in. You're also trying to build a business ecosystem, and then naturally you're only on the upward progression, and you will become a market leader. And for you to become a market leader, we said you got to first create a market, and then become a leader. Right? And creating market.
This is possible, yes. So, but the stigma exists, right? Like when you are tracking a segment, like an example of Amazon, it was very, very difficult to detect from books only store for a good 10 years. All the people thought that they only sell books.
Is that reality? Yes. I was part of it. You're part of Amazon? I was part of that. You're part of the stigma or Amazon? And the stigma, okay. So his question is, if you get too widely known as a book retailer online, is that going to diminish your chances of growth in the future? And he says Amazon actually went through that stigma, trauma, whatever. Any thoughts on that? One second, I'll just come to you, sir. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Does it have anything to do with that question? No, I'll come back to you. Yeah.
People define set up an association every video. You say, if I'm the leader of this segment, when I'm trying to be leader of this segment, they know, but they do that. And if you do it, they say, I do that one well. What is this about?
Exactly. So one way to, I'll just come. So one way to look at it is, what matters more as a startup when you're trying to build proof? Investments or fame? You want to raise capital or you want to become famous? I mean, something comes before that, right? Yeah? So the point is, if you're trying to go after a segment, you got focus, you got clarity, you got absolute efficiencies built into all aspects of your business to go achieve that, and chances are you'll become successful. And with the virtue of capital, you can do all of that. Yeah, that's my take on that.